Hey guys, today I'm going to show you guys how I make modern pop punk music, and I'm going to show you by walking through the mix and production session I did for one of my clients, Mark, for his song Yesterday. The music video is out now. It looks like this.
Run away, just you and me, and stay up late. We used to think that yesterday the thrills would all be worth it. We used to run away, just you and me, and stay up late. We used to think that yesterday the thrills would all be worth it.
I'm going to be walking through the production choices that I made, some of the things that I'm doing in the mixing phase, all to get this boys like girls style pop punk sound. Also, if you like this kind of content, please hit subscribe, comment bell, all that stuff. But yeah, let's jump into it. So first I want to break down the guitar layers. For this guy, we had really 3 with one here at the ending, but these look like 5 tracks, but really they're just double tracked for this part here and this part down here. So we'll start out with these guys. For these guys, I used my Les Paul, which has Fishman Fluence pickups in it. As you can see, they were pretty high gain when we were tracking them in. That's just kind of something I do with that guitar specifically. Even if it like clips off the DI a little bit sometimes, I think it still sounds good. For the guitar tone, I'm using Neural DSP's Rabia Archetype. I'm using this preset that I made called Fishman Chug. It's just voiced to be a really aggressive pop punk tone. I'll include a download link for this tone in the description, so if you guys want to use it, knock yourselves out. But you can hear we're pretty much exclusively using power chords with these guys. I feel like with this style of track, it works really well to separate the guitar into like 3 different sections of like lows, mids, and highs. And these guys are the lows. They're just power chords. You can see a little bit of a high pass filter, a little bit of MoTT. I feel like this works really well at just getting these guitars to be tighter because it really controls the mid-range, keeps the low end from being too flubby, and then also there's a little bit of a presence boost. So if I turn MoTT off on them, they sound like this. Then turning it on. You can just hear there's a little bit of a life that pops out. And then the way that I've been processing guitars like these for past few projects, I've really been enjoying this Kornef amplified instrument processor. Yeah, it's just been really good at acting almost as like a channel strip, but specifically for high gain guitars. Up here, you have this EQ section, high pass, low pass filters, and then a 4-band EQ. There's a VCA compressor, just to sort of round them out level-wise a bit. And then this insufferable mid-range filter, which is honestly the reason why I bought this plugin. I really enjoy using it. So if I hit the listen button, it'll actually solo the frequencies that it's pulling out right now. Anyone can tell you that when you work with heavy guitars all the time, that is like the worst part. And then if you hit this Kornef logo here at the top, you can see there's a bunch of other things like dynamic EQ that I wasn't using on this guy. So we've got our power chords here. Underneath that, I like to add what I just call an extension. And right there, you can hear kind of doing like the pop punk thing. I'm just playing octaves on the A string, but a little bit higher up on the neck. That's just something I learned from learning a bunch of pop punk songs. Same guitar tone on this guy. High passed a little bit higher. I feel like you need to be really careful about how much low end you leave in the guitars in a genre like this. Basically the same mixing chain. Every instrument is going a little bit to this Valhalla Vintage Verb on this large wooden room preset. So if I solo that, you can hear it's actually not that noticeable. It's at like -14 here, -24 here. And it's really just to like help seal that live band vibe. I feel like when you have 0 reverb, it gets really dry and dead. And then we have these guys here, sound like this. Which I got from using my Strat, running through the Fu Monkey Grat preset in Guitar Rig 6. And like I said, you have sort of like your lower neck guitar, your mid neck guitar, and your high neck guitar. This is the higher part. And I felt like this one needed to be like double tracked because it's only slightly in there. And as you can see, the high pass filter is way higher on this one. And then there's a brief moment in the pre-chorus here where we wanted there to be more of like a lo-fi vibe to them. And for that, my favorite go-to is to just use the phone preset in Pro Q3. I use that like a lot. And then here at the very end, we have one small section with some chorus guitars. And that's just using my Strat on the almost clean preset, a little bit of talc chorus, and then I think we're also using a little bit of ROM reverb on Ascend and a little bit of H delay. This is kind of like my go-to like instrument specific delay. And that's what all the guitars are doing. Earlier in the video, you might have heard that there was like some pumping going on. I personally like to sidechain my guitar bus to my kick and my snare, just because I feel like it makes a lot of space for the drum kit, which is normally the thing that's getting like swallowed up by the guitars. So if I turn that on, you can hear like the whole bus kind of ducking a little bit. There's a little bit of a ducking vibe, but when the whole track is going, you don't really feel that because the drums are sort of filling in that space. And then I have a little bit of track spacer sidechain to the vocal. I feel like vocals popping out in a mix is the biggest hurdle when you have guitar tones that are like this big and this fat. I just have it on like 2% here. And you can see it's pulling out a lot of this like 300 range, this like 900 range. I like using the filters to sort of center it here because I'm not really trying to get more presence to pop out of the vocal. And this is a range that I want to just kind of leave alone. But yeah, I feel like this really helps that like extra 2% of getting a vocal to pop out on a mix, which when you get to the final stages of mastering is normally the problem that you run into, which is like, all right, how do I get this track to sound good and stay the same and be compressed, but also have the vocal pop out on top? So here's what the drums sound like going from pre-chorus into chorus 1. So you can hear there's like some ear candy going on in like the transitional space. So we have this giant rack of electronic drums, which sound like this. So that's two elements. We have this drum bus that has, drum bus on it, a little bit of SPL on it. That was just to make it pop out a little bit more in the mix. But we had this formant filter running into this eternity delay. And you can kind of hear that there's like some weird like filtery stuff going on into the delay. And then you can hear that volume jump down. That's because I have a utility here to sort of lower that volume. When we got to the mixing stage, we felt like this was a good level for this drum kit, but we needed it to sort of duck down a bit once the full kit came in. In terms of the samples that I'm using, we have the Amethyst low kick from Oversampled. And then we have the Amethyst corrupt snare from the same pack. And then I think we used one of these glare loops. I just wanted some stuff that was sort of messy on the stereo side, just so it wasn't like the kick and the snare. Here on pre-chorus 1, you can hear that form filter is really like adding movement in it the whole time. That's just because in that first pre-chorus, we don't really have the drums come in halfway through. So it needs to be a little bit more interesting than just this drum loop. But yeah, that's what that guy sounds like. We also have a little bit of shaker and tambourine, which is pretty quiet. Again, one of my favorite tricks is to use like a really fast hi-hat or shaker. It can like really help a drum beat that's kind of like ba-ba-ka, ka, ba-ba-ka. Like it can help it feel like it's moving faster than it actually is, which is what the drum beat sounds like here in the chorus. When we bring in that loop underneath it. It just adds a little bit of like a subtle 16th note thing. We played a lot with it to make sure it wasn't like super noticeable, but it's there. For our kit, we are using Mixwave Luke Holland. And it's just broken out into different channels, which is something you can do in Contact. So our snare, tom, overhead slash cymbals, and room mics are all on their different channels. Not doing a whole lot of processing on them, except for the kick. I wanted to use a little bit of max bass. If I turn it off, turn it on, just adds a little bit more thuddiness to it. You can see I'm basically just using a little bit of effect compression to round them out a little bit, and then some clipping here. But the more interesting part is during pre-chorus 2 when they do this. We have some decapitator going. And you can see the high cut is kind of closed at the start and it opens up slowly. And it's self-contained in this rack, and it just turns on here when it starts that drum beat, and it turns off when it goes to that transition fill. And then to give it a little bit more of a movement, I added this flanger. And then I used a little bit of utility after the flanger, because when you add like some phase-based effect, sometimes you can get a little bit of a volume drop off. But yeah, those are the drums. Underneath that, we have some like sound effects and risers and hits. So you can hear going from verse into pre-chorus, we have some of these guys. You know, they're more of like a wispy thing. They're not really like a hard hit, which I think are great going from a verse into a pre-chorus, because you kind of want to save those like hard hits and hard risers like for the chorus, which is what we do here. We have these risers. So those soloed. So you can see we have like some longer ones, some shorter ones. This top one here, it's a little bit more like screechy, panning between the left and the right, whereas this long one at the bottom is more of like a straight like white noise riser. This one here in the middle, also a little bit white noisy, but a little bit more breathy, and it's a little bit higher than this one. And then we have this reverse here, which is more low end heavy. So I think it's really important to like stack up risers, but not just stack the same kind of riser on top of itself. It should be like, I'm stacking this new riser on top of this other riser because this first riser is good, but I'm not getting everything I need from it. So let me find some other riser that has different aspects in it that complement this first one. Similar to what we did here on these impacts. So right here, you can see we have one that's kind of blurring the downbeat to make sure it's not just a hard cut. So it's also a little bit more of a weird flangery horror sound effect. We also have clap impact here, which is just like my favorite like white noise clap sound effect. The oversampled amethyst pack. It's more of this like filtered radio sound, and it goes on longer than the rest of them, but it's only in that one frequency, so it doesn't feel like you have this like white noise thing that's just lasting forever. And then we have a sub drop, which is so faint and so quiet, but I felt like it was part of the lineage to just throw a sub drop in something. So we have all of those guys going, and then below that we have the bass. I'm kind of a broken record at this point, but it's Submission Audio's punk bass. It's like slappy and gritty, fat clean preset in Neural DSP's Parallax. A little bit of NLS, just because I wanted to harmonically move it out of the way of the drum kit. So the drum kit in this mix has like a different channel strip preset and different drive amount, which can subtly help get like some separation with the kick and the bass. It's not major, it's not night and day, but it does make a difference. And then I have this preset that I made for mixing bass. So you can see we have some Neve style EQ, an 1176 that's going pretty hard, and then this FG36A. If I turn this guy off, You can hear the honking just come out a little bit more and the low end goes away. If I turn it back on, you can hear that like scooped sound, but like in a good way. And then on this track, I felt like there was a ton of low end in that bass. So I actually have a sidechain compressor, sidechain to the kick to pull down the bass track, but then I'm also using track spacer to additionally pull out some low end. Again, another thing that in this genre will be the death of you is getting to the mastering stage and realizing that the low end is just all flubby and that the bass and the kick, they're not matching, or they're matching too much and they're like in the same range. After that, we have some synthesizers, which I think are like the most interesting part of this style. So I was very inspired by a lot of the older pop punk stuff that I used to listen to, like Boys Like Girls. And so here's what we have going on in the synths. So up here at the top, we have this synth, which a lot of these guys are using just like Ableton presets from the Horizon pack. This guy's the main star of the show, is this Transgate. And to me, that kind of brought it into the realm of almost that like hit the lights style, like pop punk era. There's a lot of OTT on this guy. So if I turn off the OTT and the Transgate, turn them back on. Sometimes instead of like EQing something like this, I will just use the output of OTT almost like a 3-band EQ and be like, okay, just cut out all the lows there. And then we have this little harpsichord dude. Just to add some emphasis on the snare. Like when I play it with the rest of the track, you can hear it just kind of like... It's almost artificially adding in like a ring on a snare drum that's like perfectly in tune. Then we have this guy, which is just a little lead. Just to fill in some space in the verse and the pre-chorus. It doesn't really play any other time. And then we just have a couple of guys holding out some chords. So again, just holding out like a root and a third. They're kind of higher voice than I normally use with my pads just because there's so much taken up in the low mid range with those guitars. I think the most important one is this guy here that has kickstart and auto pan on it. If I turn those guys off. Adds a little bit of a stereo spread thing, but then also, again, another rhythmic element to sort of support what's going on with the band above it. And then we have vocals, which all the vocals sound like this.
We used to run away, just you and me, and stay up late. We used to think that yesterday the thrills would all be worth it. We used to talk about our favorite songs and how we used to dance along. 'Cause yesterday everything was perfect. 'Cause yesterday everything was perfect.
So a lot to unpack here. First, we have our lead.
We used to run away, just you and me.
It's a little bit of a delay going on, but in terms of our chain, using some Pro Q, just a high pass, low end frequency, and then dynamically pulling these like 2 resonant frequencies in the voice. I always find like this is the range where it will like dynamically jump when a singer is like going between like loud parts and quiet parts. A lot of people love the LA2A. I think it's cool. I prefer the LA3A, which is a little bit more aggressive. Here, let me turn off the effects. So right now we just have these guys going.
Just you and me and stay up late.
Then we have some virtual mix rack going.
Just you and me.
Another de-esser because I hate S's.
Just you and me.
RVox for some more compression, and then some dynamic multiband stuff to level it out.
We used to run away, just you and me, and
To level it out a bit. By the end of it, I wanted a little bit of a Pultec. Not even just the sound of like a Pultec adding some air, but like the way it will distort.
just you and me.
I know it's kind of exaggerated in like this Waves plugin, but I actually kind of like it. And then I ended up using some Decapitator to add just a little bit more grit to the vocal, which I feel like I'm always having to do in stuff where it's like heavier vocal stuff. You need like almost a little bit of grit in the vocal to make it match the level of grit in the guitar, and then a little bit of micro shift.
Yesterday, the thrills would all be worth it.
I basically only had a little bit of slap delay on it. The main effects that I did for it, I kind of tried something different for this track where basically I rendered out the main vocal just as audio with that mixing chain I just showed you on it. And I don't know, I was planning on messing with like what effects would be there with these guys I'm about to show you the whole way through, but I felt like it was just easier to do it visually like this. So first we have a ducking Valhalla verb.
Where did all the time go? It seems like it was yesterday we met.
Same plugin, but different settings. A little bit less ducking, but we're doing a half note instead.
Where did all the time go?
You're not really going to hear any difference with these guys other than like the timing. So then we have a quarter note and an eighth note. So here's what the main vocal sounds like without those guys.
Where did all of the time go? It seems like it was yesterday we met.
And here's what it sounds like with.
Where did all of the time go? It seems like it was yesterday we met, driving down all the back roads.
It's almost like a cleaner version of a reverb. But then we did some other fun ear candy stuff. So we have this guy here.
'Cause yesterday is getting so much farther away.
So that's using some transit on this vocal frying pan. And we just have this automated to go up at certain points.
'Cause yesterday is getting so much farther away. And yesterday is a memory that I can't change.
And we also have that going up with a little bit of ROM reverb, and that really fills out the rest of the track. So here's what it is with the rest of the band on.
The nights we used to share, I won't forget. 'Cause yesterday is getting so much farther away. And yesterday is a memory that I can't change.
Like there's this blurring, smearing effect that really fills out the vocal. We then have this guy here, which sounds like this, which is actually Mark's vocal that I turned into a really long like smear. If I turn off the effects and then reverse it, I used Paul X stretch to just like turn it into like this one long held out note. And then I basically just messed it up with chorus, delay, reverb, just to get this like one long sustained weird note. And then we have a trance gate, and then we have a trance gate that's sort of dynamically opening it all up. And then I wanted sort of like a hard cut after that, so I just added a utility to add that. I then did something similar here with this guy. Just a different part of the vocal. Also not as many effects, and then some auto pan, so it's like going back and forth between the right and the left. We then have some fun little guys here doing some fill-in dubs. Which sounds really weird, but if I solo them without the effects on, it's just a mixture of like his vocal with a lot of like formant shift on it, but they're meant to like fill in like the last word that he spoke. Threw a bunch of reverb on them, and so now we solo the vocal.
We had to stay quiet. We never really cared what anyone said, speaking out in the silence. The nights we...
And you can hear like those like little bits, they just kind of fill in everything. And then we have, again, the rendered out vocal just thrown onto its own track with a bunch of delay ROM that comes in at certain points. And it's just to get like a Post Malone style filling in the vocal whenever it's not singing. So
it seems like it was yesterday we met, driving down all the back roads. remembering the secrets that we.
And on some level, all this stuff that I'm doing, you could 100% do with aux sends, and most of the time I do, but sometimes it's really helpful to just visually see what is going on. And that is one of the benefits that I see of using this technique over aux sends, is it's very easy to see what's going on, when is it happening. Whereas in Ableton, you kind of just have to like hit these guys and expand them all out and then see what's going on. So I don't know, I messed around with it for this song. Other than that massive amount of ear candy, we have a main dub, which is just like a center dub in the middle.
We used to talk about our favorite song,
which is a little bit more auto-tuney and a little bit more drivey, just because I feel like it adds a little bit more crunch to a vocal. But then we also stack that with some stereo doubles.
Run away, just you and me, and stay up late.
And you can hear how much like thickness and how dark they are comparatively. So when we stack them all together, they sound like this.
The yesterday is getting so much farther away.
And then we have some low octaves.
We used to run away, just you and me, and stay up late.
And then we have some harmonies.
We used to talk about our favorite songs and how we used to dance along.
And then we had some ad libs here at the end, just shouting out some specific words with a little bit of reverb.
Worth it.
And so when we stack all of those guys together with the ear candy, it sounds like this.
We used to run away, just you and me, and stay up late. We used to think that yesterday the thrills would all be worth it. We used to talk about our favorite songs and how we used to dance along. 'Cause yesterday everything was perfect. 'Cause yesterday everything was perfect.
And also one little thing that was just kind of like a cheeky little Easter egg. I found this cassette tape noise. Just this scratchy little sound, and I've like buried it in the mix. So it is there, but you can like barely hear it. Just enough to give it like a little bit of a texture on the ears. But yeah, that's what all the production looks like. And again, it sounds like this.
Stay up late. We used to think that yesterday the thrills would all be worth it. We used to run away, just you and me, and stay up late. We used to think that yesterday the thrills would all be worth it. We used to talk about our favorite songs and how we used to dance along. 'Cause yesterday everything was perfect. 'Cause yesterday everything was perfect.
If you guys want to check out Mark's song, I will link it in the description down below. But yeah, again, if you enjoyed this kind of stuff, subscribe, do all that. There's also Discord down below full of a bunch of people who enjoy this kind of like nerdy production breakdown stuff for pop-based guitars. So yeah, if you're interested, it's free to join. And yeah, I will be seeing you guys next week.